Hello and welcome to another edition of Tpot, The Power of Touch, Educating Health in Wellness with me, Michelle Hammond. Today I am absolutely delighted to be joined by the Right Honourable Caroline Nokes MP as we discuss how we elevate, educate, empower and enable people to understand and value the importance that the wellbeing industry plays in the health and wellbeing of our population.
Morning.
Good morning, how are you?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Good, good. Thank you so much for joining me. It's an absolute pleasure to get some opportunity to catch up. I know you've been very busy being an advocate for the health and wellbeing industry. I know we've now kind of stolen you as our light to help.
I'm not sure I'm very bright at the moment, but
well, and I know we've regressed as well. So I know that obviously the industry is sort of massively trying to sort of push for us to get open and lobby to get obviously some support and funding for all of their colleagues out there that are struggling through this challenging time, as I know many people are. And I think, you know, I really wanted to catch up, not really to kind of zone in on that, as we have some incredible ambassadors in our industry sort of banging the drum and wanting to obviously sort of represent, you know, the community in getting what we need to move forward. But what really came out of it for me over this pandemic period is just, here we are again as a wellbeing industry, unrepresented, undervalued, underappreciated, and actually that's been consistent for my 30-year career. You know, that's not just in light of a pandemic. And so I think there is a lot more we need to do as an industry to obviously elevate what we do and why we do it. But particularly in the last 10 years, I've been zoned in much more on looking at how we put the health in wellness. That means that a lot of the treatments, facilities and services that we provide are focused much more around helping people with chronic health conditions and quite often very preventable lifestyle conditions, whether that be, you know, some cancers, dementia, depression, heart conditions, rheumatic conditions, chronic, you know, inflammatory sort of digestive disorders, lack of sleep, all of these things that are playing a massive part in disabling our lifestyle. And I think actually that's where I get frustrated when it gets drilled back down to being about painting nails and putting on lipstick, which in and of itself is beautiful and really powerful. I mean, there is absolutely nothing that can boost your confidence more than putting on your makeup or having great nails. It can help people that are lonely or that are feeling depressed and anxious. It can be, you know, some of us that are mums that are just taking a moment for ourselves. You know, it has major well-being benefits, but actually I think we consistently negate the real proven scientific benefits of what some of their provisions offer. When we look at massage and how big a part that plays, I mean, just 5 minutes of massage has been scientifically proven to help people with dementia be less stressed and anxious and in the moment. We know that many people going through cancer who have interventions and get offered complementary therapy say it's the best point of their week. They're getting pulled and prodded left, right and centre, but having that opportunity to take a breath, to reconnect with themselves, can help them with body image issues if they've had to have a breast or a limb removed. It can help them manage pain. It can help them just feel less stressed, less anxious about the symptoms or side effects they know they're just about to have to go back through again. So, you know, these are powerful, aren't they? These are really important experiences. And I guess, like, for me, it was an opportunity to say, like, how, I mean, we know it's undervalued and underrepresented, but how do we elevate it? How do we integrate as an integral part of a complementary therapy provision that works alongside modern medicine and science to bring about better results for people?
So I think there's a lot of stuff there. Nothing that you've said I would disagree with in any shape or form. I think I've spent the last, I don't know how long it is now, we'll say 6 weeks, focusing primarily on the economic contribution and screaming, this is an industry that is contributing to the exchequer, it's providing employment. There is quite definitely an additional aspect, which I don't think I've said enough about. I've said a bit about, I don't think I've said enough about the contribution it makes to people's and I'll put it in the same language you've used, wider well-being. Yeah. So, and actually the point that you made about dementia really made me think, because every year here in Romsey we have a dementia festival, and the best bit about DemFest for me is undoubtedly going and sitting in one of the massage chairs for a bit. And it's, well, I say sitting in a chair, you kneel on a stool and, you know, have a head massage for 5 minutes of your life, and oh, it's just bliss. And you kind of, I think people tend to forget, so it's very, very easy to dismiss an entire sector as being all about eyelashes and nail painting. And as I say to everybody, because oh, it's just beauty. I said, there's no just in that. That's where actually the massive turnover is. That's where the employment is. That is underpinning an entire industry. But the woman that goes along and has her lashes done, if that gives her the confidence to go out and face the world, then who are we to criticise? Actually, so much of it is about building back confidence. So whether it's alopecia sufferers going and having their eyebrows tattooed, whether it's cancer patients going in and having reflexology treatments, just to make them feel better, different, happier, and even if it is only in that moment. And I spoke to a wonderful woman who has, and I always pronounce this incorrectly, so apologies, who has Ayurvedic facials, which she says solve her migraines. And as somebody who suffers from them, I suddenly go, this is worth trying. I mean, anything is worth trying when it comes to dealing with your migraines. And it just, I think that's not well enough known. It's not well enough understood that this is an industry that is combating loneliness. It's getting people out of the house. I always tell people this, is that when you go on your 3-week rotation to have your nails done, invariably you will end up sat in the salon at the same time as other people who are on the same 3-week rotation, and you talk. And I think it's really interesting to just observe some of the relationships between therapists and clients, the relationships between clients, the fact that you will hear conversations going on around a salon of people who have not been out for the rest of that week. And it's their opportunity to go and interact and have a little bit of human contact and conversation. And I think those who know and understand have perhaps always known and understood. And I've always said to male colleagues in Parliament who are sort of scratching their head and going, I have no idea what you're talking about. Well, no, and I know you have no idea what I'm talking about, but go along to one of your local salons. Let me tell you, they're all locked down, so they'll be delighted to meet you and tell you about what they do, and you will find it phenomenally instructive and informative, and suddenly we'll wake up to the fact that this isn't some trivial add-on to hairdressing. This is a sector in its own right that is contributing enormously to the way people feel about themselves. And this morning I've come off another Zoom call where I was talking about returnships for female scientists who have taken a career break, whether that's for caring responsibilities, whatever. And we ended up spending most of the conversation talking about giving people the confidence to go back into the workplace. Yeah. And the beauty sector is one that gives people confidence and therefore has such a massive benefit to people's mental health. We're really conscious at the moment of the impact that lockdown and the virus has had on people's mental well-being. Well, to me, this smacks of a very, I hesitate to use the word easy, but a very easy way to give people's mental well-being a boost is to go and sit in a salon for an hour. I know you can't have facials at the moment, but have a massage, have a head massage. And it suddenly gives people an opportunity to think, just to switch off from the stresses that we know COVID has imposed upon us. But how we better articulate that, how we explain to a wider male population, because I think a massive proportion of women get it and get it instantly. And I always tell people this, the weekend before lockdown, I went to the hairdresser and there was a lovely old lady who was in there having her hair done. And when I walked in, she went, see if she's here, it's okay. And as I sat down at the basin, she was talking to me and saying, you know, they can't close the hairdressers because this is where I come every week to have a little bit of R&R and to feel better about myself. Yeah. And, you know, that is so true. So I think women do get it. I think what I've spent the last 2 months of my life trying to do is to persuade male colleagues in the House of Commons how very important it is. And I think if I had one message for the industry, it is talk with one voice. Yeah. You need to be much more cohesive. I can't have medics that do injectables saying, well, we're the gold standard and nobody else should be doing injectables, and looking down on those who don't have the same level of medical qualifications. I can't have those who are doing injectables referring to people who are in the beauty sector as, oh, well, that's just beauty, as if somehow it doesn't count. I think there's a real need for kind of a cohesiveness across the sector.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. And I think one of the things that, you know, I banged a drum about for a while is that, you know, I believe I sit under what is a wellness industry, because in my career, having managed large scale resorts and destinations, designed them and operated them and educated within them, for me, it's about fitness, it's about movement, it's about having recreation, leisure, sport, you know, because to be well, we know that the environment we work and live in and play in, a social environment plays a massive part. We know our social interaction, our community, our sense of purpose, our occupation, our financial security, a sense of self, our physical health and well-being, all have to be sort of balanced for us to feel ultimately well. It's not just about physical health, it's not just about having some R&R, it's not just about living in a great house, it's about having all of those aspects that help us feel well. And I think under the spa and well-being banner, we represent that better. But, you know, there are obviously massive, because it's a big umbrella, there are massive aspects under that. And I think you're absolutely right. We haven't helped ourselves because we have all these different, you know, hair, we have beauty, we have makeup, we have, you know, medical aesthetics. As you say, there are variants then under them. And I think we definitely need to get much better at regulating that and speaking with one voice through it. But I think what really frustrates me when we look at, and just some of the statistics I deal with on a daily basis, you know, 1 in 2 people will have a cancer. The reoccurrence of cancers are getting, you know, sort of obviously sort of massively elevated, and that's an under-supported area. We have over nearly 1 million people now with dementia, of which it's believed 40% are preventable, as are 40% of cancers. We have obviously depression, you know, one of the worst prescription, you know, sort of rates in Europe. We even now have 6-year-olds being prescribed, you know, sort of antidepressant medications. We have huge issue with obesity, which we know obviously is now, you know, sort of last week, Boris has gone out there saying, you know, how important it is for us all to get moving. You know, all of these things, diabetes, you know, again, preventable, type 2 diabetes, 95% preventable with lifestyle. So it's, well, actually, if all of these most chronic conditions, we're living longer, but 50% of our life is living unwell, which costs the economy an absolute fortune, you know, has our NHS on its knees. If we do more about prevention, which is everything our industry stands for. So our industry is all about prevention. It's about helping people move more, eat better, sleep well, be more mindful. I mean, in its simplicity, whether we're coming to it from facilities and recreational facilities, whether we're using saunas and hydrotherapy and sort of cryotherapy, whether we're using touch, you know, whatever it is, it's about helping people live a better lifestyle, making better choices. And I think, you know, that's where I get frustrated when it's poo-pooed as something quite superficial and pampering and indulgent. And you're like, well, actually, no, it can make a massive difference. So then we have the money to spend medically on the stuff that really matters, where actually lifestyle doesn't play a part at all. And we can help a lot of these people that are recurring with things like cancer get access to treatments and stuff quicker and better, because actually we're not consuming the resources on stuff that was preventable. I think obviously as a population, we need to take a bit more responsibility too, don't we? But, you know, that comes from education. And if we're not leading with that from the top, how do we get people? I mean, just a prime example, I had to go into A&E at the beginning of the year, and I sat there for a few hours and I watched around. There's 2 vending machines in the A&E, both with crisps, chocolate and Coke, and pretty much everyone sat in that room, from what was probably 7 up to 70, you know, was sat there either eating crisps, eating chocolate, or drinking like litre bottles of Coca-Cola. And I'm sat there thinking, oh, we're in A&E. If at the point you get to A&E, you're not thinking, you know, what could I do better for myself? Like, how do we change that culture? And for me, that comes from policy, doesn't it? It comes from sort of.
Excuse me, that's my dog choking.
Is it? Poor dog.
Sorry.
So you okay?
Yes, I think so.
So how do we do that? How do we put that centre forward, or do you see that as something that's already changing? Or
I think there are many aspects to that, and if I just talk about COVID for a moment, in many respects, I regard that as a massive wake-up call to many of us. And I think the Prime Minister has been absolutely right to come forward with the obesity strategy. What I want to see from a national drive to get people thinking more about what they're consuming, to get people thinking more about the type of exercise they're doing. And I use the term exercise absolutely in the loosest sense. So I always remember having a personal trainer who spent a massive amount of her time helping elderly people. And she said, you know, this is not exercise. This is giving people the skills that they need to be able to get up and down off their chair.
Fitness, yeah.
And getting people more mobile. And I think that's a huge part of it. And I do look at my mother, who every day does the cryptic crossword and the Sudoku. So actually, wellness is also about getting people to use their brains as well. And
intellectual
mindfulness. I think we do have to kind of instill in people, and the term responsibility for themselves, but it has to be done through encouragement. So we're not going to bully and fat shame a nation into taking responsibility for their own health. What we have to do is equip them with the tools that they need. So part of that is about education. It's about enabling people to have the right skills to be able to cook nutritious, healthy, and I always say this, meals that are also quick and easy, meals that are inexpensive, because we want people to be able to know that in 15 minutes they can rustle up a quick, nutritious, tasty, healthy meal that isn't going to cost them a fortune.
Yeah.
I think COVID, for many people, gave them more time. Lockdown meant that people were furloughed, they were struggling to get the products in the supermarket that they might usually rely on. So actually that's a great opportunity to either dig out your old recipe books that you've not looked at in years, or to get onto Google, which is what my daughter always does, and just Googles recipes from the ingredients that she has. And I think we need to make sure through all sorts of mediums, so through education, of course, in schools formally, but also through television, through, you know, infotainment. So it has to be about making sure that people can be educated and informed through television programming about how to cook brilliantly, cheaply, easily. And I think, you know, there's a whole range of chefs who are leading the way in that, with people like Jack Munro. Jamie Oliver has done a fair bit of that. But look at the phenomenal success of Joe Wick's PE classes. And that's about being able to do exercise in your own front room without equipment for a half an hour a day that is keeping people active and healthier. And, you know, I always say to people, I think the drive to get people cycling is great, but not everybody has a bike. Not everyone can afford a bike, and the helmet, and to keep them maintained, etc. Whereas we've all got a pair of feet. So those who are able-bodied can walk, and those who have challenges with mobility, actually, in the majority of instances, it's better for them to move as much as they can, as opposed to just sit. And I think we need to be emphasising that exercise doesn't have to be about lycra, it doesn't have to be about getting sweaty, it has to be about raising your heart rate for 20 minutes, which you can very easily do by a brisk walk. And actually, if you're really unfit, that walk doesn't have to be brisk in order to get your heart rate up. So I think a lot of it is about empowering people. It's not about shaming them to take responsibility. It's just about saying, well, hang on a minute, if you walk your 10,000 steps a day, that's a brilliant start. But you know what? If you walk 12,000 a day, it'll be much better for you. And set yourself achievable targets and goals. You know, if we expect everybody to be off doing couch to 5K in the next 6 weeks, then we're doomed to failure. But if we're saying to them, do you know what? However many steps you walked yesterday, how about you stick another 500 on today? It gives people something that they can actually work towards that's realistic and doable. And I think one of the big problems when it comes to healthier lifestyles, when it comes to losing weight, that we will get disheartened really easily. That we set ourselves unrealistic goals, and then when we're not a size 8 within a fortnight, we feel like we've let ourselves down. So I think we need to be much more mindful about the way we go about it. Don't talk endlessly about calories and BMI, just talk about eating better, fresher foods. And of course, I absolutely understand that that comes with a cost implication, and that for families, it can be a struggle to make sure that you're eating the required amount of fresh fruit and vegetable. But actually, at the current time, it's a really great opportunity to experiment with things like, I think it's the Morrison's boxes of leftover produce that you can buy really cheaply, and, you know, go challenge yourself to cook something completely different for the family.
Yeah. And I think you're absolutely right. I mean, all those touch points, and there's some great stuff coming out of the private sector. And I love Joe Wicks myself, and kind of joined in his sessions every morning with my children without fail. And, you know, it's brilliant to see. But I mean, you know, here's a guy in a private sector who's obviously initiated that activity. You know, how do we get government, how do we get it sort of being inspired from the top, that lifestyle really does matter, and actually how much investing in your lifestyle can stop a lot of these real chronic conditions sort of plaguing people. Because obviously a lot of people normally learn this quite late. You know, they get a diagnosis and then learn, actually that wasn't so good for me, or maybe actually I could have done that, and we just seem to be encouraging you know, sort of bad choices and elevating, you know, everything. I mean, look at the pubs. You know, we've got pubs, and don't get me wrong, I love going to the pub just as much as the next person. But, you know, again, we've got a spotlight being shone on an industry that's being undervalued and underrepresented, that's trying to help people be healthier and well. And then we've got another industry where people are not necessarily so mindful about their health and well-being as a small percentage, and not necessarily then obviously sort of respecting a lot of the parameters around the pandemic either. So there just seems to be a mixed message between what health and statistics of the country sort of show, what policy is, and what's actually being done in practice. Does that make sense?
Oh, and I think that makes perfect sense. And I wrote a column for my local paper last week that was talking about the contradictory messages about Eat Out to Help Out versus the National Obesity Strategy being launched that week. And look, we all want our local businesses to thrive, and I think it's really important that Eat Out to Help Out is not just seen as people binging on junk food. It's giving a boost to our local cafes, restaurants, pubs. It's also sending a clear message that if you go out safely, you know, you sit at a table that is well spaced from other tables. It's about giving people confidence to get back into the hospitality industry, which is a sector that's been hit really hard. Now, I wrote an article for the Telegraph Online yesterday, which was saying, well, if you can give a VAT break to hospitality, how about giving the same VAT break to the wellbeing sector when they're back up and running fully? Yeah. Because I think that would really be a boost. It will make prices cheaper. It will encourage people back in. I also think that something like Eat Out to Help Out, well, if you were able to apply that to the sector, give people the opportunity to trial a spa, trial a gym, trial going for reflexology, it would then demonstrate to people that this is a sector that the government thinks is safe.
Yes.
And B, encourage people back in. Because the thing that's really struck me with the beauty sector being partially open, it's very quiet.
Yeah.
Incredibly quiet, even in those premises. So, you know, my local nail bar is very, very quiet at the moment, and that's somewhere where they don't do walk-ins because they don't need to, because their appointment book is always full. And so I think that would send a very clear message that actually this isn't just about hospitality, but we could provide the same sort of boost to well-being just to encourage people into the door. And I think a lot of the schemes in the obesity strategy, you know, the £50 voucher to get your bike fixed, that's not about getting your bike fixed. That's about a contribution towards getting your bike fixed. So people look at it and think, oh, well, that's 50 quid from the government. I will go and get whatever it is that needs to be sorted. And the bill will probably be bigger than that, but it's given people a helping hand and a sort of little nudge right direction.
Yeah, well received.
Things like making Weight Watchers available on prescription, and that's been the case for a very long time. I remember from when I used to go to Weight Watchers, there were two ladies who always sat in the same seats at the front. They were on Weight Watchers on prescription, and that would have been 15 years ago. So, but I think their sort of great initiatives is that it gets people headed in the right direction. And we can't be a nanny state. We can't instruct people as to what they have to do. We can merely give them nudges and tools and encouragement in the right direction. Because as you said, when you have a horrible diagnosis, that often, too often, is a massive great wake-up call that had it happened 10 years earlier, if people had understood that eating and drinking to excess was going to cause them Y in 10 years' time, they think, oh, actually, maybe I just cut back a bit. I always say that to my daughter. Her father is a type 1 diabetic. And I always say to her, look, there's a lot of diabetes in your father's family. Be a bit careful about how many sweet things you're eating.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, it's just, certainly his diagnosis was a wake up to us all, is that, oh, you know, this is a really horrible condition that he will have for the rest of his life. And it does make you think, oh, you know, I've seen him having to inject insulin. I don't want to get type 2 myself, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're absolutely right. So it's only when you're close to it. I mean, when we first started delving as an organisation into diabetes and realising that even in the UK, you know, over 100 people have amputations a week because of their type 2 diabetes. Like, oh my gosh, but if that's avoidable, like, why are we screaming more? Because surely nobody wants to have a limb amputated. And if it can be avoided, and as you say, absolutely through education, empowerment and enabling people, but by people seeing lifestyle as a positive choice and something they're going to get reward out of, and even just, you know, banging our drum, I guess, a little bit more that actually we should understand more about our bodies than we maybe do about our iPhones, and elevating that a little bit more. I mean, our body's an incredible thing, but actually most of us don't understand how it works. And I just think that whole education as well will just help people make those better choices, because when they are educated, naturally most people do make sort of better choices for themselves. It feels good to feel good, doesn't it? You know.
Yeah, and I think that's the truth. I always so I'm a terrible insomniac, and strangely, when I'm fit and when I've been exercising loads, I will sleep all the way through the night. And yet, you know, my brain doesn't allow me to work out that, yeah, you're exhausted. You'd be better off going for a run now than trying to go to bed, because if you run, then you'll actually be fitter and you'll sleep better. And that's the reality, is that we don't necessarily listen to our own bodies enough, and we will prioritise the wrong things and not necessarily the important, right, necessary things to do. And I always say, you know, technology has changed enormously in the last 20 years, but we are very bad at allowing technology to control our lives rather than using the time it could give us back.
Absolutely.
And I say that you know, we allow the technology to dominate instead of using it as a tool and saying, well, look at all the time I've saved because of it, so now I should go and put the technology down, go and get some air. As you will always find GPs in this part of the world saying that the fresh air in the Test Valley is the best cure for depression that they know. Probably not enough of us are out getting enough of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're absolutely right. I think the pandemic has been a wake-up call for many. It's unfortunate that people have been enforced to stop in many situations, but I think actually, and I'm hoping that actually the well-being of the nation will thrive as a result of it. Because, you know, I, as I'm sure you are, hearing many stories of people that are going out for walks and actually have never walked. They've just got in their cars to commute to work, sat at their desk, come home, watched Netflix, went to bed and had that routine. And now actually they've got a bit more time. They've been able to think about what they want to do, how they want to spend their time. They are getting out more, quite often with family and obviously their loved ones. In and of itself, getting to eat together or do things together has had huge sort of benefits, and I'm hoping the positivity of that people will do. And I do a lot in the workplace, actually working with a big financial organisation at the minute, and you know, they're already looking at actually, why would people need to go to the workplace? We've got to make it a real destination. People have got to arrive there to collaborate and connect, because they can't do that remotely. So when they can flex, you know, they have the choice to work at home more often, but then when they come into an office environment, there's a real reason to be there. And I think actually even just seeing lots of big corporates relook at the health and well-being of their population, hopefully will make a massive difference. Because ultimately, you know, we all want to live longer, but that's no fun if from 40 onwards most of us are living with at least 1 or 2 chronic diseases. And I think, you know, as a lifestyle-based industry, you know, we are alongside a kind of, you know, sort of medical and scientific profession, well placed to help people take that time and sort of you know, help their health and well-being better than anyone.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, that there was a wry smile from me at sort of over 40 living with at least 1 chronic condition. I'm avoiding that so far.
Well done.
That you can take control of that yourself.
Yes.
Isn't it? That you can make sure that you eat sensibly, make sure that you don't drink excessive amounts of alcohol, make sure that you take enough exercise, which, you know, can come in all sorts of variety of forms, and, you know, and give yourself time to think. And I don't know how hard that is, and that we all lead very, very pressured lives, but part of it is, you know, giving yourself the opportunity to take a break from the stresses when possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, I'm delighted we have you as an advocate, and obviously, you know, the stuff that you said you've been involved in, and articles you're writing and things like that, just all help sort of, you know, position that, and that you know, sort of just fills me with hope, because I just, you know, I see so much opportunity that the pandemic has presented actually for us to go, actually, one, as an industry, yes, we need to get much more united and much more focused on elevating the why we do what we do, not just what we do, and substantiate that with the health and scientific benefits of many of our proven facilities, services and experiences. But ultimately, as an industry, yes, we have destinations we'd love people to go to and to experience. But ultimately, you know, we want a nation that are invested in their well-being, that value the importance of social connection, touch, you know, sort of exercise, movement, sleep, you know, nutrition, and I think anything we can do to kind of help elevate that. And I think, as I said, you know, the government coming out and talking about obesity and people moving more is a very welcome change, but I just don't want to wait for another pandemic for us to be then addressing issues with, you know, depression, diabetes, cancer, or whatever. It's like, actually, here's the opportunity to address all of those chronic conditions and help people understand how they can reduce their need to get any of them, or live better with them if they're unfortunate to have them. And I think it's great that we've got you sort of helping spearhead that message as well. So thank you, Caroline.
Well, I'm trying. I think there's still a long way to go, but there's reason to be optimistic.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Well, lovely. Thank you so much. I know your time is very precious. I really appreciate you joining me and all that you're doing for us.
Lovely to talk to you this morning.